What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Will and Rock MMA podcast.
What's going on, everybody? We have
UFC 140,
UFC 140
right?
Argentina,
and UFC 141 that just happened
in China.
Earlier today in the morning. It's magnificent card, both cards. But let's get straight to it. UFC 140.
UFC 140. Before we even get started, one thing I want to say: I'm extremely happy with the UFC has done coming into South America and really made a name for themselves. This card lived up to its expectation. At least the main card did. Let's shoot straight to it. First card was Paulina Botelho versus Cynthia Calvillo. Amazing card.
Performance by Calvillo was truly amazing. She looked really good on her feet. You know, used her movement. As you could see, Botelho was just moving forward. Really wasn't using her footwork. She was looking for the counter punch, but really, although she did hit her with a couple of them, you could tell Calvillo wasn't really a little rocked by it. Tremendous camp that she's coming out of, alpha male camp. I believe that she's going to be one of the females to be reckoned with.
So Calvillo did end up winning, by the way, in round one by submission. I think what sets her apart from other fighters when you're training with that camp is all those sons of bitches can submit.
Yeah.
All of them. Their submissions are off the hook, and their rear naked chokes is what they're known for. If you go back to Fedor, Chad Mendes, just a bunch of fighters who really train that way in that camp, but just do a phenomenal job with it. So kudos goes out to Cynthia for that fight.
Good job.
Next fight we had Guidos Canetti versus Marlon Rivera, which this hits home for us because Marlon Rivera is an Ecuadorian fighter who's been dying to bring the UFC into Ecuador and does an absolute phenomenal job in the second round.
He definitely does, and it all came through to him in the second round. He started off really slow, and it's one of the things that he ended up saying at the end was that he's not used to starting the first round really strong, maybe feeling him out too much, but in the process, he could have gotten stopped. Good thing that Vera took it down to the floor and is one of the great submission artists in the UFC as we speak, which was able to hold him down going into the second round. And I don't know what type of devil got into him in the second round, but he came out guns blazing and could have easily stopped him with knockouts, but decided to take him to the ground, get a rare naked choke, and finish the fight. Tremendous performance by Marlon Vera.
So the great thing about this kid, right, is you could tell he has like jitters going into the first round. Just the everything that deals with the limelight and being part of a main event, I'm pretty sure is getting to him, and he's gonna have to work with that, especially after this victory, because now we're talking about bigger names. Now we're talking about more limelight. We're talking about more pressure on him going into the next fight. And I told you this during the ending of the fight after I was done screaming and shouting, is that I always say it takes a smart fighter to know what he's doing in the octagon. When you punch somebody and you realize I'm gonna take a risk and try to knock somebody out, and setting yourself up for the takedown after you hurt somebody and going for the submission, it shows the level of maturity on a fighter, and it shows the level of awareness and how prepared he was for this war he was going into. Not only was it a great knockout, and I don't want to talk about this all day, but it's just a very smart way of looking at fights.
And important to say, just to mention this, that we want to hover over this card all because of Vera, but that's the way you finish. Going back to what you're saying, that's the way you finish a fight when you have a fighter hurt. Great performance. He lived up to the expectations. I'm looking forward to see who they're going to put him up with next.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Who we got next, Rob?
Next fight, we got Cesar Fieri versus Ian Heinisch. Heinisch, oh, by the way, Vera won the submission. We talked about that in the second round, and Ian Heinisch won unanimous decision. This fight it was a back and forth fight. Crowd was really behind it. People really thought someone was going to get knocked out. At the end of the day, it was just one of those fights that anything could have happened, and we just didn't see that knockout, or we didn't see that submission. But at the end of the day, great fight to really start the last two fights, which really put on a show as well.
I agree with you. Heinisch, the little bit that we know about him, if I'm not mistaken, it was his second fight in the UFC or his first fight. No, he was first fight in the UFC. He's undefeated as we speak. He straight out of jail goes into I don't know where he was, but he seems like he's getting his life together. So kudos to him, and hopefully he gets his stuff together. He's a very well-rounded fighter. He was just fighting a much tougher opponent. But I do believe that he has the skills to knock somebody out with a worse chin and definitely take him down, because he tried a couple of submissions in the process. So something to really look forward to with that kid.
Couldn't agree with you more. So Henich, kudos to Henich for that fight as well. Then we have Khalil Roundtree versus Johnny Walker. And I think this was one of those fights that was really a surprise, because there was so much hype behind Roundtree and how well of an overall fighter and well-grounded fighter that he's become. And Johnny Walker ends up getting the knockout in the first round, which was even a bigger surprise for us.
Well, it's even, the surprise for me is Roundtree coming off a huge win, right, versus the kickboxer, I forgot his name. But anyways, K1 champion, make a big fuss coming into the UFC. Roundtree knocks him out in the first round. So coming in with that momentum, I said, oh man, I had Roundtree winning this fight, before the fight, of course. All of a sudden, we get a guy like Johnny Walker, and I see a little highlights of him. He was in team Kevin Gaslam's team, if I'm not mistaken. Long story short, he looked like a true developed fighter, but not enough to knock some opponent out. When I told you he just dominated Roundtree, he caught him in the tight clinch, did not let go, and his knees came down wailing. This kid came in so goddamn confident and left there like he didn't even have a fight. One of the guys that I believe could go up to the title contention. Just mark my words with this kid. He's the truth. He's the truth.
That says a lot, man. Kudos to you for saying that too, because I saw him fight. I thought he's legit. He definitely has that. He definitely has a name that he could get anywhere with, man.
Yeah,
the name of Johnny Walker is pretty intense. The co-main event, which was such a fucking phenomenal fight, Darren Elkins versus Ricardo Lamas. And I was just going in, I was bashing, I wasn't necessarily bashing, but I was really doubting Lamas going into this fight, because Lama, he reminds me of those fighters who just starts to peak and then drop so drastically back to back. Talk about making a name for yourself. Talk about getting your name back in the mix.
And a big fighter to beating Elkins is a big name.
Elkins is a big name in that weight class, but most importantly is how he won. He waited to the third round to get that TKO, as we expect Lamas to do. And Lamas did exactly what we assumed that he could do, but we were still questioning. Well, he proved us wrong. He could actually do it.
I agree with you.
I know
100%.
you're a fan.
I'm a huge fan of Ricardo Lamas from the beginning. I believe that he had the best opportunity for a title fight. Not necessarily win all the way, because he was still very blue, very green, wrong color. But I believe that he had what it takes to become a title contender. Like you said, he kind of fell off the map a little bit. This fight against Elkin was a huge fight, and he performed exactly how we expected him to perform. Looking forward to see him in fight again. One big win for Ricardo Lamas, and you got yourself a title contention with this guy. I'll tell you that much.
Ricardo needs a big win. His next fight needs to come out guns blazing and really see if we could get that knockout, because that's what he's really known for. And like I said, as long as he gets his name into the mix, anything is possible with injuries and everything that goes on in the sport. Right. And Ricardo Lamas already has a big name as it is. So kudos to Lamas, man. Shout out to Cuba for that victory as well. Neil Magny. Main event. I don't want to push. Neil Magny versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. I don't want to butcher his fucking name.
I mean, coming into this fight, I just did not see Magny, winning this fight. But what a tough motherfucker, man. I know all these fighters that come into the octagon are tough, but he took it up another level. A guy like Ponzinibbio, who has tremendous right and left hands, and his power is unbelievable. Magny decided to stand up with Ponzinibbio. I mean, his face pretty much said it all. I'm glad that he got stopped the way he got stopped at the time he got stopped, because it could have ended up much worse. But Ponzinibbio, another guy from South America, from Argentina, who has another title contention. I really do believe that this guy is the face of Argentina.
Two fights into it, man.
Yeah, I do believe so, and I'm really looking forward to him.
Just to give him as much kudos as possible. this dude actually went in there and ended up knocking out Magny in the fourth round. And I love what Magny said, because towards the end they said, Magny, don't you feel like your corner should have thrown in the towel after you were getting pummeled so bad? He said, that's not what we're here for. Well, we need to be stopped in order for us to lose. And I kudos to fucking Magny. I really had Magny. I thought Magny was going to be a bit more agile in going into this fight. His looseness is going to get, but Santiago's power is just a fucking force to be reckoned with. And he has all the right to be calling out some big names after this victory.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
All right, guys.
Great card.
Kudos to Argentina for hosting UFC Fight Night 140. So now UFC Fight Night 141 in China. We have Li Yingyang versus Daniel Sawada. I'm very familiar with Li. Li is a freaking beast and a half, and he pulled it off. TKO in the third round. If I'm not mistaken, it was a kick to the stomach that ended up winning.
Yeah, the body kick. I just wanted to bring this in. This is actually pretty cool that we even saying this. We take it to South America over to the Asian market. We put in a whole bunch of Asians that have the opportunity to become big stars, and you kind of want that, because you want a whole continent to be behind these fighters. Every Asian fighter that fought in this card performed at its best as in their capacity, and not only that, they put a tremendous performance. Not anybody gets knocked out with the body kick. We've seen it more often, but the way he ended up doing it with that right kick to the liver speaks volumes of this guy. There's so many fighters in the UFC right now that I think everybody deserves a title shot. But good job to him. I mean, fairly new guy. I don't want to throw him all over.
He went back-to-back losses. I mean, he had a loss, came back, won, and then if I'm not mistaken, he lost the last fight. I think we actually commented one of his fights, and he ended up losing that fight. So coming back, it was the first fight in the Asian market, here in his hometown, and he pulls the victory.
Tremendous
the
win.
way he won, it's just impressive. So kudos to him. Next fight was Song Yangdao versus Vince Morales. And once again, hometown heroes are winning, right?
Yeah,
we got a unanimous
decision. Vince Morales winning this fight.
I think a lot of people did, and I think the great thing about it is, one thing, especially going into these fights, is Vince Morales, don't leave it up to the judges, right? But at the end of the day, Yang Dong did a phenomenal job of completely dominating and really just taking this victory from his hands. One thing I will say about Vince is that Vince now has a better understanding of what it does to win fights. And this sport is such a brutal sport. You need to get a TKO or submission, because now these judges are doing crazy things. And he just needs to have that there's bigger and better expectations for Vince going into the next fight.
I agree with you 100%. Looking forward to seeing what they both have to bring in the next fight, since it wasn't the greatest performance of each fighter.
Couldn't agree with you more, man. And then the veteran, the monster of K1, Mr. Alistair Overeem, the Reem himself, ends up fighting versus Sergey Povalik. And I will tell you off bat, man, Alistair Overeem, comeback, amazing comeback. I wish it would have been a comeback of the year type of thing.
Yeah, he pulled the old school on his ass.
A fucking brutal ass knockout, bro.
Yeah,
brutal ass knockout. Ends up winning in the first round after people just doubt. I mean, granted, a lot of people doubt him. They should, man. The guy is already. I was looking at his record. He's like 44-17, bro.
Yeah. He's lost a lot of fights, but in the process, is how he's lost his fights. I mean, we're talking about a guy like Francis Ngannou, who almost took his head off. You know what I'm saying? But he keeps on coming. He loses to Blaydes, who ended up fighting Ngannou, the fight after, which we're going to talk about. And instead of him deciding, you know what, I'm going to continue going to the Greg Jackson camp, he decides, you know what, let me go train with this kid. Let me see what I got. And goes into his camp and starts training with a guy like Blaydes. It tells you where his ego is. But it also tells you the type of competition that he knows he's going to be facing and where he needs to be at in his career at this point. He's an older fighter, not only in age, but in fighting years. Because he's gotten knocked out.
Technically makes him older.
Up to 110%. He's gotten knocked out so many times, and he keeps on getting up. He's your Andrei Arlovsky of the sport, in a sense, right? Tremendous performance by Overeem. he still has the weak chin, but he's figuring out a way to stay away from people hitting him in the face, which he's going to need for the rest of his career. And hopefully he wins a couple more fights before we get him into the title contention.
I totally agree. A phenomenal job for Alistair Ring. Phenomenal job. Once again, somebody when you're put behind four walls and you're doubted on, and then you come back and do something like this, I guarantee you, the UFC is scratching their head going, fuck.
Yeah.
Because these are the fighters they want to push out with a bang. You know, like, oh, great fight. Let's give him his kudos. It's time for him to go. And the fact that he won the way he won was pretty impressive.
And he beat a rookie, first UFC.
Sergi is a fucking monster. He's a monster. 17-1 going into this fight.
But it's important to say, it's his first fight in the UFC. This is where you have to make a name for yourself. This is the type of competition you're going to be facing, Young Buck, and you need to bring it. You need to bring it harder next time.
He's not a Young Buck, but I do agree that because he has a lot of fights under his belt, but it's a new Young Buck going into the UFC.
That's what I meant. Sure. That's what I meant. Not disrespect. Yeah.
All right, guys. Main card, which is everything to talk about, right? Francis Ngannou ends up fighting Curtis Blaydes, and Francis Ngannou ends up getting the TKO versus Curtis Blaydes in the first round.
This is a fight that had so much weight on both fighters. We're talking about a guy, Francis Ngannou, who's coming off a loss against Derek Lewis, who was one of his worst performances in the UFC history. Period.
The worst performance in UFC history in the heavyweight division, hands down.
Hands down, right? He loses the fight. So we're talking about a guy who lost against Dos Santos and did he lose to Kovov? Oh, now I'm forgetting. But he loses to Dos Santos, comes into this against Derek Lewis, loses to him. They're riding this guy. They're saying that he's the best fighter, that he's gonna do this, he's gonna do that, and all of a sudden he takes both losses. Everybody's freaking talking crap about him at this point. He's not a good fighter. Why is he's only training standing up? He's not training wrestling. Dana White gets on the mic saying that he's overrated and they should have never hyped him up.
That is by far the biggest insult. And you know, a lot of commentators have said this, and you're gonna hear this a lot going into this week. I feel, especially after such a big victory for him. As the UFC president, and granted, he might never hear this from us, but as a UFC president, the man should watch what he says about his own fighters. You're the president of the company, you gotta promote these fighters. When you bash somebody this bad, as a president, people fall back and not watch fights, which is what you want people to start doing.
Right.
And for someone like Francis Ngannou to come out after the most horrible fight in UFC history and do what he did in this fight shows you that he's back to being mentally prepared and letting his hands go, which is what it's what he gets paid to do.
And it's what he said at the end. He's like, I've matured so much in that 1 year process, and I'm pretty sure it has to do with the fact that taking 2 big losses and people bashing him like crazy, including the president of the UFC, Dana White, shows you that he says, I've matured. I'm pretty sure that all was riding on him. But let's not talk about Blaydes, a guy who is coming up a great performance against Mark Hunt. People are saying this is the next guy for the belt. This is the next guy for the belt. So both fighters had a lot of stuff riding on them, and the way Ngannou comes out of this fight is one of a great story so far.
Almost like a comeback story.
It really is. I believe that if he wins a couple more fights, he gets a title fight, he's gonna prove the world wrong, and as well as he should, because he's a fucking beast.
Now, just really fast, just to talk about Curtis Blaydes in a bit. Curtis Blaydes is still a young, hungry dude. Everybody stumbles through something like this. He knows what to do. I'm almost certain that if there's a part 2 to this, Curtis would win the fight because he would fight a better fight and a smarter fight.
Yeah.
Granted, Francis Ngannou, anything could happen. Curtis Blaydes is the truth, man.
He really is.
Every fighter like this, especially in this weight class, you're bound to fight. So, some people are freaks of nature like Stipe is and goes so many fights without losing, and then ends up losing to, which is current to be the best fighter of all time if he gets a couple more wins, I feel. At the end of the day, young cat, I think he going into this next fights, you're going to see a different side of him. You're going to see somebody who's well more prepared, who probably could defend a little better, and really is going to implement his wrestling better as well, because that's what he's really known for.
Yeah. But again, back-to-back great cards, not in an American market, outside the U.S. you know, we've been using the word fucking kudos all day, but you have to give these fucking people kudos. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, we'll see you guys next week. We got the next card coming up soon.
Peace, guys. And tonight we're stuck watching Liddell versus Ortiz.
We are. Yeah, word up.
Yo, and shout out to Chris Lieben. He's actually refereeing this fight, man. Thank God this guy's making money. Not people putting him to fight bare knuckle fights. Peace, my people.